Chapter 4 Twit and Figlin. Inside the hut's glowstone-lit interior, Twit's hunched silhouette moved with uncharacteristic precision, his claws tracing the pulsing violet veins across Zill's distended abdomen. The kobold's ears twitched as he pressed a hollowed gourd against the taut skin, listening intently to the rhythmic thumps within. Luna hovered nearby, her fingers tangled in the frayed edge of her wedding sash, the embroidered constellations now glowing in sync with Zill's labored breaths. "Untainted," Twit announced at last, tapping Zill's navel where the skin had stretched translucent. "Skekvile skipped the final incantation. Just natural alchemy here. A small bit of Luna's essence, violet star seahorse fertility." His claws fluttered in a vague, stirring motion. "Mixed properly, not like his usual sludge." Outside, the crowd's murmurs hitched as Celadon pushed through, with Rian half-dragged in her wake, while Deep poked her head inside, the dragoness's massive form casting elongated shadows across the gathered gelflings. Deet's talons flexed against the packed earth, her frills flattening when startled villagers recoiled. As Rian staggered forward, he could hear Zill groan. "Oh, I don't feel so good." Twit's claws drummed against the gourd still pressed to Zill's belly, his oversized ears twitching with each muffled kick from within. "Pregnancy will still last 9 months, he announced, as if discussing the weather rather than a male gelfling swelling with unnatural speed. His beady eyes flicked to Luna's white-knuckled grip on the birthing herbs. "Good thing the warlock didn't use the incantation," he added, tapping Zill's navel where the skin had stretched thin as parchment. "Or his child would have been corrupted." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of horrified murmurs spreading through the healer's hut. A shadow fell across the woven floor mats as Mother Augra's massive form filled the doorway, her lone eye reflecting the violet pulses beneath Zill's skin. "And poor Zill," she rumbled, her voice like grinding tectonic plates, "would have burst like a seed pod." Her gnarled fingers, each thicker than Zill's wrist, hovered above his distended abdomen without touching, tracing the luminous veins mapping his flesh. The ancient being exhaled through her nose, a sound like wind through dead branches. "Skekvile always did forget the stabilizing agent." "Burst?" Zill's voice cracked like dried wood, his fingers spasming against the woven mat as another contraction rolled through him. The words conjured images of overripe fruit splitting under summer heat, of bloated riverbank corpses he glimpsed as a child, swollen, purple, wrong. Twit's oversized pupils contracted in the hut's dim light. "Yeah," he rasped, claws tracing the pulsing violet lines spiderwebbing Zill's abdomen. "If the warlock had used the incantation before I got you both out." His tail flicked toward the hut's entrance where the Aratham scout crouched, its chitin still streaked with dungeon filth. "Would have boiled you from the inside out, like a kettle left too long on the flame. Plus, your guts would have splattered all over the place. Messy." Then Twit paused and added, "And since the warlock used a sample of Luna's essence, that makes Luna the mother of the child." At that, Luna's fingers went slack around the birthing herbs. The woven basket slipped from her grasp, spilling fragrant petals across the packed earth like drops of blood. Her pupils dilated, wide and dark, as the caves beneath Harar. Before her knees buckled. She collapsed forward like a marionette with its puppet strings cut. Her forehead striking the edge of the birthing mat with a dull thud that sent Zill scrambling despite his own agony. Twit was faster. The kobold's claws shot out with uncanny precision, catching Luna by the braids before her face hit the stone hearth. Her body arced unnaturally in his grip, limbs twitching as if jolted by lightning. The betrothal bracelet around her wrist flared blindingly bright, its constellation patterns burning white-hot for 3 frantic heartbeats before dimming to a sickly violet pulse that matched Zill's swollen veins. Celadon's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade through cobwebs. "Zill," she said, her ceremonial robes still streaked with Dragon Country ash. "You are temporarily relieved of merchant duty, at least until your baby is born, or until you stop glowing like a bioluminescent mushroom." The attempt at humor fell flat. Her usual regal composure fraying at the edges as she took in Zill's swollen form. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the gathered gelflings, but Zill barely heard it. Another contraction rolled through him, his abdomen tightening like a drumhead stretched too far. His fingers scrabbled against the birthing mat, fingers digging into the woven fibers, as he arched his back with a choked gasp. The veins beneath his skin pulsed brighter, gold giving way to violet, illuminating the shocked faces of the villagers crowding the healer's hut. Celadon's pronouncement hung in the air like smoke after a forest fire. Merchant duty. As if he'd simply caught a seasonal sniffle, rather than become one of the first male gelflings in living memory to swell with child. Zill opened his mouth to respond, but what emerged was a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Temporarily relieved," he wheezed, his free hand clutching at the taut curve of his belly, where something kicked sharply against his ribs. "How considerate." The words came out breathless, fractured by another wave of pressure low in his abdomen. The contraction hit like a landslide, slow at first, then all-consuming, until suddenly the pressure plateaued. Zill gasped as the relentless stretching sensation ceased, his abdomen no longer expanding, but still humming with unnatural warmth. Beneath the thin sheen of sweat coating his skin, the violet veins dimmed to a faint glow, their pulsations settling into a slow, rhythmic thrum. The child, his child, had stopped growing. For now. Twit's ear twitched against Zill's belly. His claws splayed across the taut skin, where moments before, the violent movement had threatened to split him open. Ah, the kobold rasped, tapping the now quiescent swell with clinical detachment. See? The baby's sleeping. All that kicking wore it out. His beady reptilian eyes flicked to Luna's unconscious form, still cradled in Celadon's arms. Mother's essence exhaustion probably helped. No more fuel for rapid growth. Twit's claws drummed an uneven rhythm against the gourd still pressed to Zill's swollen abdomen. But the pregnancy is still going to be 9 months, he announced, as casually as discussing tomorrow's weather. His eyes flicked to the shocked faces crowding the healer's hut. What? Did you think fertility potions change gestation laws? Thra still spins the same way. Celadon's ceremonial bangles clinked as she knelt beside the birthing mat, her ash-streaked robes pooling around her like spilled ink. Still, dear cousin, she murmured, pressing a damp cloth to Zill's forehead. You need to take it easy. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly as they brushed the violet veins pulsing beneath his skin. The movement stirred the scent of crushed moon blossoms and something metallic, like copper left too long in the rain. Twit's claws clicked against the gourd as he straightened, his hunched form suddenly radiating authority. Okay, break it up, he rasped, shooing villagers away with broad sweeps of his tail. This is not a carnival sideshow. The kobold's nostrils flared as he herded gawkers toward the doorway, where Augra's looming silhouette cast jagged shadows across their startled faces. One particularly persistent Sprighton leaned in for a closer look at Zill's glowing abdomen, only to yelp when Twit nipped his ankle. I said scatter, he growled, baring needle-like teeth. Unless you want to explain to Mother Augra why you're gawking at that boy's insides like he's a dissection specimen. The crowd dispersed with muttered apologies, though whispers still slithered through the gaps in the woven walls. Twit turned back to the birthing mat, where Zill lay panting, his swollen abdomen rising and falling like a tide under violet-lit skin. The kobold's beady eyes softened, just slightly, as he suppressed a cool compress to Zill's forehead. Rest now, he murmured, his claws surprisingly gentle as they adjusted the birthing herbs around them. Your child sleeps. Luna sleeps. His tail flicked toward where Celadon cradled the unconscious Luna, her wedding bracelet's constellations pulsing faintly in time with Zill's slowed breaths. Even a dragon knows when to sleep. Outside, Deet's massive form curled around the healer's hut like a living barricade, her bioluminescent veins dimming to a somber gold as twilight deepened. Rian leaned against her foreleg, his fingers tracing the jagged scales where soft gelfling skin used to be. The scent of crushed herbs and something faintly metallic seeped through the woven walls. Birth blood and blossom tincture, thick enough to taste. Twit's claws scraped against the packed earth as he emerged from the hut, his hunched form silhouetted against the glowstone-lit entrance. The kobold's ears twitched at the murmurs still slithering through the dispersing crowd, whispers about abomination and Skeksis corruption that made Diet's frills flare in silent warning. Twit bared his needle teeth at a lingering Sprighton healer. "I said scram!" Twit shouted, his voice cracking like dry wood. The gelfling recoiled, nearly tripping over his own cloak in his haste to retreat. Behind him, Aughra's looming form blocked the last curious stragglers. Her single eye, gleaming like polished obsidian, swept over the thinning crowd. "Go on, then," she rumbled, the ground trembling faintly beneath her gnarled feet. "Unless you want to explain to Thra why you're dawdling like a bunch of brainless Nebri when there's rebuilding to be done." The last gawkers scattered like leaves in a storm immediately. Aughra's massive hand closed around Twit's scruff before he could dart away. Her fingers, each thicker than his arm, lifting him effortlessly until they were eye to single eye. "You really need to control your temper, Twit," she rumbled, her voice like two continents grinding together. The kobold's legs swung inches above the ground, claws twitching as if already calculating escape routes. "Can't help it," Twit spat, though his ear flattened against his skull in a telltale show of difference. He twisted his neck to glare at the retreating Sprighton healer's back. They were poking Zill like he's some festival oddity. His tail lashed once, violently, before he wriggled free. "Now if you'll excuse me," he added with forced calm, "I need to go look for my brother, Figlin." The tavern door creaked like a dying animal when Twit shoved it open, his claws leaving fresh gouges in the already scarred wood. The scent of fermented root wine and roasted cave mushrooms hit him first, followed by the unmistakable musk of his emerald-scaled brother. Figlin's spines always smelled faintly of wet slate and crushed pepper vine. There he was, hunched over the counter like a discarded cloak, a row of lime-green spikes along his skull, dull in the dim glowstone light. "There you are!" Twit growled, hopping on to the stool beside him. "I've been looking all over for you." "Still upset about the tavern?" He jabbed a claw at the half-empty keg behind the bar, its tap still dripping from his last visit. "You ate me into bankruptcy, Twit," Figlin muttered into his mushroom ale, not looking up. The emerald spikes along his spine drooped lower, casting jagged shadows across the counter. Twit snorted. "Well, sorry. Maybe next time you shouldn't give me free food." "Lesson learned." He elbowed Figlin's ribs, hard enough to make him slosh his drink, but not hard enough to crack bone. Figlin wiped spilled ale from his muzzle with a sigh. "It's not that." Twit's ears perked, his claws tapping an impatient rhythm against the counter. "Oh, I get it," he sneered, baring needle teeth. "You're still moping about how that hobgoblin pirate wench dumped you." He cracked his knuckles, the sound like snapping twigs. "Just say the word, brother, and I'll tear her a new mizzenmast." "It's not that either," Figlin muttered, his emerald spines flattening against his skull as he swirled the dregs of his mushroom ale. "Though I appreciate the offer." His claw tapped a folded scrap of parchment beside his mug. The wax seal cracked open to reveal jagged runes in kobold script. "Think about the message we sent to our kin back in Harar." Twit's pupils contracted to pinpricks. "No." His tail lashed against the stool. They actually replied?" "Afraid so. We're about to be visited by our dear beloved cousins for dinner this evening." The tavern's ambient chatter died as Twit's claws sank into the countertop, splinters peppering the air like shrapnel. "Ugh." "Can I have some of your peachberry ale?" Twit groaned, already reaching for Figlin's untouched mug. His brother's emerald spines twitched in irritation, a telltale sign Twit ignored as he drained half the drink in one gulp. The fermented peach scent did little to mask the acrid fear suddenly coating his tongue. "That's not all. The whole clan is coming over," added Figlin. At that, Twit went livid. "What?" Across the village square, Rian watched one of Deet's fathers, the wiry elder, press a trembling hand against his daughter's snout. The dragon shuddered at his touch, her massive frame folding tighter around the healer's hut like a living fortress. "Don't worry so much, Rian. You didn't know that Deet was going to transform into a dragon. None of us did." The words rang hollow. Rian's fingers clenched around the hilt of his sword. Not in aggression, but as if the familiar weight could anchor him against the tide of guilt rising in his chest. The blade's edge caught the dying light, casting fractured reflections across Deet's pearlescent scales. Each gleam seemed to whisper failure in a voice that sounded suspiciously like his own. "Just try to relax. She'll need some time to practice her shape-shifting ability. Just don't torture yourself." Deet's talons flexed, gouging deep furrows in the earth as she adjusted her coiled position around the healer's hut. A low, shuddering breath escaped her nostrils, warm enough to ripple Rian's tunic. And when he dared to meet her eyes, the pupils were still hers. Wider, slit now, but still that impossible gentleness. One massive wing twitched outward in an aborted motion before folding back, the gesture so painfully Deet that Rian's throat tightened. Rian reluctantly left to join the others at dinner around the great oak table in the tavern.
Where the cooks never blink. We slip past the cellars, past the storing guard. A Rothan scout whispering left, then shard. Skeksis warlock howling, where'd my test rats go? While his potion shelf wobbled in the torchlight glow. Tap, tap, to whip the kobold, trust his snout. He'll sniff your belly, sort it out. If it wriggles wrong, he'll yelp and shout. But this one smells like hope, not gout. Oh, to whip the kobold, tiny sage. Reads baby futures, page by page. Uncorrupted thought, he crows with pride. There's a squeaky clean sprout on the inside. Ho, ho. See Skekfile the warlock, gloomy as a tomb, tried something all natural in his bubbling room. Just herbs, just roots. He muttered eyes all wild and accidentally brewed a perfectly normal child. So praise to the tunnel,